for everybody. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga. We are in November of 2022. I had some requests today to focus on the core. So that will involve stabilization poses such as planking, working through the transverse and rectus abdominis with yoga movements and poses. I also have requests to work this SI joint area on the sides of the pelvis. And the SI joint is kind of like a lock and key. So if I can take my fingers like this, and it kind of goes in together like this. So when you think of the SI joint, it's not a really mobile joint like the elbow joint would be. It doesn't really move much, but it moves a little bit. These two little bones kind of shift together in the lock and key. So we want it to be stable. And sometimes we tend to overstretch this area if we're feeling some stiffness and tightness in this area, and then we create instability in the SI joint. So I want to just have a little disclaimer on that when we stretch that area, we do it gently and not overly push the SI. And we also want to really keep that area of our back strong. So we'll be working on that as well as the lumbar area, the lumbar curve of the spine. So let's come on down to your mats to start on your back. And just get nice and comfortable because we'll be here for a bit. And just bend your knees, set your feet flat, and try to find a neutral spine as you lay here on the floor. Depending on how your spine is shaped, I have a pretty fair amount of a lumbar curve. I can reach my hand really underneath my lower back because I have that much of a curve. Other people might have more of a flat curve in the lumbar spine and your back might settle completely down in the floor. But I just want you to start to rock your pelvis a little bit as we're here. So if you tip your frontal hip bones, which is called the ASIS, if you tip that forward, you'll create more of an arch in your back. And I'm really overextending that so you can see that space underneath my lower back. Then if you tip these frontal bones back toward your ribs, you'll press your lower back down. So when we tip the frontal bones forward, this is called the anterior tilt. Anterior meaning to the front. Then when we tip those bones back, it's a posterior tilt. So posterior meaning to the back. So I just want you to start to warm up that lumbar area of your spine by gently tipping forward. Take an inhale, tip back, and exhale. And whatever you want to do with your arms is fine. And you're kind of using your feet to help you with that posterior tilt. So as you pull your frontal hip bones toward you, press down into your feet, almost like you're going to start to come up in a bridge pose. And we'll do about 4 more of these pelvic tilts. And this is a wonderful therapeutic exercise. Oftentimes, if you go to physical therapy for back problems, they are going to give you this posterior and anterior tilt. It's really good for mobility of the lower back. We'll do 2 more. And just check in and see how this area is feeling for you today. And 1 more. And then as you finish, compress that lower back down. Stay in your posterior tilt. And sometimes in Pilates, this is called imprinting. So we have our lower back imprinted into the mat. We'll bring our right knee up toward our chest. And then flex and point your right ankle or make some circles. So I'm keeping that posterior tilt. Really stretching out the low back and also adding a little bit of this glute stretch into the picture. And then set that right foot back down on the floor. Do an anterior tilt to tilt your pelvis forward, creating space under your back. Then your posterior tilt, hold it, and bring your left knee up to your chest. Flex and point the left ankle or do some circles. Just to warm up that joint as we're holding that posterior pelvic tilt. And you're breathing, not holding your breath. And then relax that foot down to the mat. Come back to a neutral spine, whatever space under your back is right for you, and extend your legs out long. So sometimes people with low back problems, this is not comfortable because now your pelvis, it's hard to do a posterior tilt. And so sometimes it creates more arch in your back. Let's take an inhale and reach the arms up. And if you want, you can create a little more space under your lower back, like you're doing an anterior tilt. And then on an exhale, pull your right knee up to your chest and go ahead and curl your head and shoulders up as well. And do that posterior tilt, imprinting your lower back down into the mat. Then inhale, lay back, extend your spine long. If you want, you can create more space under your back. And exhale, pull your left knee in and press that low back down into your mat. And for about a minute, I want to go back and forth at your own pace. So you don't have to follow my rhythm. It's actually nice to follow the rhythm of your breathing. Inhaling to stretch, exhaling to compress the low back down. This is called the wind relieving pose, and it's a really nice warm up for the hips, the knees, because we're bending them and straightening them. Even the ankle if you flex and point. And then definitely your lumbar spine. We're also focusing on our core here, because as we're pulling the head and shoulders up, we're doing an abdominal crunch and bracing the muscles of the rectus abdominis and transverse abdominis. Let's do one more on each side. Right side and left. And then we'll inhale and reach, and without lifting your head and shoulders up, just bring your right knee up into your chest. Pull it in and hold. So we're going to do a twist, and I want you to think about stretching your hip and rotating your spine, but not cranking your SI joint area, which would be the right side of your pelvis and sacrum. So we'll open our right arm out to the side and gently pull this right leg across. I don't want you to feel any pain right here in the right side of the SI joint area. I want you to feel a nice little release for your right hip. Your shoulders should stay down onto the mat. You can look straight up toward the ceiling, or you can turn your head toward your right hand for that little bit of a spinal twist in the cervical area, in the neck. We'll take one more breath here. Just notice if you're feeling any discomfort in this area. And we'll come back to the center and just briefly extend that right leg up. If you have your strap close by, we've got time enough that you can use it, or you just hold behind the leg and lengthen that muscle just where you are today. Your knee can be softly bent. You just want to elongate the back of the leg, and it's an area that's typically tight for most of us. We'll take 3 breaths here. On that last exhalation, release the thigh. Let that leg come all the way down to the mat. Before we quickly switch, I just want you to check in and see how you're feeling in your low back, in your spine, in your right leg. And then we'll hug the left knee right up to the chest. You've got a little bit of pressing down into your lower back. Let's come into our twist on this side without cranking that SI joint area. Just make it gentle. The left arm can go out to the side to kind of brace your body. You can look to the left and feel a little gentle stretch in your left hip around the glute area. So with my right hand, I'm not really cranking this because I don't want to, again, overstretch that SI joint area. You want to release it, but not decrease the stability of that joint. Let's take 2 more breaths here in this twist. And we'll come back to neutral. Extend that leg up. Option to use your yoga strap. And just notice what you're feeling on this side. And for me, it's a lot tighter. And that's normal to have a lot of differences between one side of the body and the other. So we'll just hold here and breathe. That leg's at any height for you that allows it to elongate. So I'd rather have your leg be lower and pretty straight than really high and bending your knee, because then we lose that attachment of the hamstring that crosses behind the knee, which is important to finding length in the muscle. 3 more breaths. On that 3rd exhalation, release your strap, allow that leg to lower down, and then just take a moment and compare right to left sides. Notice how your abdominals are relaxing here in this position. Your glutes should be softened, and the spine back to that neutral position. Then we'll rebend our knees, setting our feet flat. Do a little anterior tilt to bring the bones forward of the frontal hip, and then pelvic tilt backwards, that posterior tilt, and try to keep that in place. And then slide your right leg out as straight as you can get it along the floor without losing that compression of your lower back. Then slide it back in. Slide the left leg out. And bring it in. So if this is pretty challenging for you, I want you to keep going this way. Your next option is to bring your knees up to tabletop. Keep pressing that low back down so you're in your posterior pelvic tilt, and slide the right leg out from here. This is much more challenging. Actually, I can feel my body shaking a little bit when I try to keep that back down. And I want you to go really slow. And we'll do about 60 seconds. So if you're up in tabletop and when that leg comes out, if you feel your lower back coming up off the floor, then this isn't the one for you to try. I want you to go back to your feet down and just slide that leg out from here. And wherever you feel like the right way for you to breathe is, there's no right or wrong way when we're doing this exercise. Just keep the breath moving. Try not to hold the breath. And really press your navel down toward the spine. Let's do one more on each leg, whichever position that you're in. And then if your legs are up, bring your feet back down. And if you did that correctly, you should have really noticed that intensity in the transverse abdominis, the abdominals that are responsible for bracing our pelvis and our core. Let's take your feet about as wide as your mat, and we'll do a slow windshield wiper. So we'll drop the knees over to the right. Your left hip lifts off the mat. You'll feel a little release through your left hip flexor and maybe your quad. And then we'll come back through the center and drop both knees over to the left. And I just want you to notice what you feel, because it depends on how tight the anterior portion of your thighs are and your hip as to what you're going to feel in this position. For me, I'm really tight in the quads, so I notice it down the front of my leg, but some of you might not if you're pretty flexible in the front of the thighs. So we are getting a little bit of a twist here. And then I want you to connect with your glutes. So as you drop your knees to the right, squeeze your left glute, tighten it. And then as you drop your knees to the left, squeeze your right glute. And that'll give you a little bit more release in your hip flexor. We've mentioned it quite a bit, and it's called reciprocal inhibition. So when we tighten a muscle, the opposing muscle on the other side of the joint relaxes. And so we can get a little bit more benefit from the stretch here. So now I'd like to hold this for a few breaths. So the next time your knees go to the right, you'll stay there, squeezing that left glute. And if you want a little deeper stretch, pick up your right foot and set it gently over the outside of your left thigh. We don't want to set it right on the knee itself, because we can compromise that joint. So just on the outside of the thigh. If that does not feel okay for you, then it's not a big deal to try that. And we'll stay here 3 breaths. Your left shoulder should be down on the floor, both shoulder blades. Keep squeezing the left glute. And then if you have the ankle crossed over, remove it and bring your knees right back up to the midline and pause there for a moment and notice what you're feeling, if anything in your body that's different on that left side. Then still making sure your feet are as wide as your mat and your knees are as well, you'll drop both knees over to the left. Squeeze your right glute, tighten that muscle, stay there. Or you can place your left foot gently on top of the right thigh. Now for me, that gives me major knee pain on my right knee. So I'm going to choose not to do that one today and just hold it without that extra pressure. Keep squeezing that right glute as you breathe. And I'm feeling a stretch all the way from my right rib cage down the front of my right hip, that ASIS area. Anterior superior iliac spine is what that's known as. And then I feel it all the way down the front of my leg to my right knee. Big stretch there. And I do feel it slightly in my SI joint area too. But this is a good strengthener for that area. We're keeping that stability in the joint. Last breath on this side. And if you have the ankle crossed, release it and come back to neutral and just check in. Notice how that's feeling. If you want to move a little side to side, you can do that, or hug your knees up to your chest. That might feel nice after that particular pose. And then take your time to transition to your hands and knees for bird dog. And our bird dog is one of the very best exercises to strengthen the SI joint. It's also known as spinal balance. So before we start, we'll do a little bit of a pelvic tilt by coming into cat and cow. So if we curve our back up toward the ceiling and tuck our tailbone under, that's the posterior tilt. And we feel a big stretch in the lumbar spine. Then to reverse that, we'll drop the belly down, lift the tailbone up toward the ceiling. That's your anterior tilt. And just go back and forth between those two movements. And we have a lot more mobility doing this on our hands and knees than we do when we're laying on the floor on our back. So you're going to get a lot more movement here through the spine and through the entire spine as well, because we can move the head so we get some cervical spinal movement, thoracic spine up in the upper back. And just link it with your breathing. We'll do one more of each, finishing with the cat. And then hold your cat stretch 3 breaths and really scoop your abs in. I want you to feel your abdominals making a connection here. Pull your belly up towards your backbone. On your third exhalation, let your back come down and try to find your neutral. And sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what neutral is because we can't see our back. We can only feel. So use that proprioception that you have. Feel equal weight between both hands and both knees, and try not to let that change as you take your right leg and send it back behind you. And that's really hard because you probably felt more weight go into your right hand. So try to balance that out a little bit, but keep your pelvis neutral. And then lift your left hand off the floor. Now you have equal weight distributed between your right hand and your left knee. And we're going to stay here for about a minute, and I want you to do whatever you want here. You can hold it still. You can move your limbs out to the sides to challenge your core and your balance a little bit. You can bring your elbow and your knee toward each other and round your back like a cat. So wherever you want to take this movement, it's yours to explore. And while you're at it, I'm going to bring my blanket here for my knees. So maybe about another 30 seconds. And what we want to focus on is keeping our pelvis level. So imagine you have one of those little tools that's a level and it has a little bubble in the middle. Try to keep the bubble right in the center, so not tipping your pelvis up or down, right or left. It's completely stable. 2 more breaths. Then bring your left hand back down, your right knee comes back down. Now your right shoulder just worked a lot, so I want to take a thread the needle on the right side. So we'll lift that right arm up, take a big stretch. Then thread the needle, reaching the right arm under. Allow your shoulder to come down to the mat, your right ear to come down to the mat. And then bring your left hand right back here on your sacrum. Make sure it feels pretty level. You can keep your hand here, or you can try to wrap your hand around your back, and you might be able to feed your fingers into the right hip crease. A nice twist, a nice shoulder stretch. A little bit of a neck release. And let's take 2 more breaths here. Then we'll unwrap the arm behind the back. Plant it firmly, the hand next to your left shoulder. Press yourself up. Inhale and reach that arm one more time. Then set your right hand down to the mat. Find a good neutral spine as well as you can in your mind and in your body's awareness. Equally distributing the weight in both hands and both knees. Keep that as you send your left leg straight back. So try not to feel a lot more weight in your left hand. See if you can balance it out. Then pick your right hand up, and your thumb should be rotating up to the ceiling like you're reaching out to shake someone's hand. Now from here, you have 1 minute on your own, so you can stay exactly how you are, or play with this a little bit, shifting the limbs off to the sides. Bringing the elbow to the knee, rounding the back up. And just being aware if you feel any difference in balance on this side. It's really common to feel a little bit more solid on one side than we are on the other. And it could be a difference in your shoulder strength on this side, your core strength. So a lot of different things can come into play here. Keep your breath moving and keep scooping your abdominals up, keeping this low back area a little small curve. Let's take about another 20 seconds. This is a really good strengthener for the SI joint. We're strengthening on a diagonal from the right shoulder to the left hip. 2 more breaths. Then our right hand comes down, left knee comes down, and we'll thread the needle with the left arm, opening out. That shoulder is saying it's nice to have a break right about now. Reach it through, relax your shoulder down to the floor, the left ear. Take the right hand, just put it on your sacrum. See if you can kind of check, make sure you're level. And then if you want, you can wrap it behind your back, reaching your fingertips toward the left hip crease. And then just relax and breathe. And we'll unwrap that arm, bring the palm to plant underneath the shoulder. Press yourself up, opening that left arm out. Take 1 more twist, reach. And then set that hand down. We'll come into a kneeling lunge to stretch our right hip flexor. So the left foot will step forward toward the top of your mat. And make sure you take a nice big step. So we don't want to have this foot back and our knee coming way over our foot here. So make sure it's a nice big step forward. Square off your hips directly forward. And this knee back behind you should be way back behind the hip. So sometimes I see this stretch and it looks more like, losing my balance there. It looks more like this. And then if you're up here and the knee is right under your hip, you're not getting too much of a stretch. So you can walk that knee way, way back behind you. And then we'll come up and just plant your hands on your thigh for now. And there's some ways we can create more mobility here in the hip. When we have a nice open hip flexor, it releases tension in our lumbar spine. When our hip flexors are tight, it can cause tension in the low back. That's where that muscle attaches. So let's explore some deeper stretches. Take the right arm up, and just the action of lifting it should give you more stretch through that right hip flexor. If you want a little more yet, we can take a side stretch over to the left, and you can use a block underneath your left hand if you want to help support your body from tipping over to the left side. And we can slightly rotate this right shoulder back, slightly twisting. All of those things will help us to stretch that muscle out a little bit more. So just explore it a little bit on your own body, see what feels best for you. And we'll take 3 more breaths here. And you can also squeeze this right glute to use that reciprocal inhibition. So tighten this muscle, and that'll help the right hip flexor relax. 1 more breath. And then come back down. Let's take a brief hamstring stretch on your right leg. So you can slide back to straighten out the front leg using your block, using the floor, using a chair, anything that'll help you stay supported here. You can also slide further forward with that leg into a front split. And we'll hold here 3 more breaths. And then we need to switch legs. So you can either pivot around on your mat, get the other foot forward, or you can make a switch and still face the same direction. I'm going to do the pivot around so you can see the left side of my body. So come into your kneeling lunge. Make sure your front foot is properly underneath the knee or even out a little further. Make sure this back knee is behind your hip because this is the muscle we want to open up and stretch. So take your time to get a good position first. There's no rush. And we can squeeze this left glute a little bit, just a little bit of tension in that muscle. And then let's explore how we can deepen this. The first thing we'll do is take the left arm and reach it up. Maybe that was enough and you don't want to go any deeper right here. Or we can side stretch over toward the right. I'm going to bring my block over to help me support. Oh, yes, that really helps increase it for me. And then we can rotate this left shoulder back. So we're adding a little bit of a twist. So just explore, find that good stretch for you. We'll stay here a few more breaths. Keep squeezing that left glute. I forgot. 1 more breath. Then release it. And let's stretch the hamstring on this side. If you're tuning in later on YouTube and you want longer stretches, just pause the video because these are ones that we really could use a longer duration if we have that time in our schedule. So try to square your hips off as much as possible here. Relax the back of the leg, keep breathing, use props as needed. A nice equal ratio breath or a sinking breath where you take longer to exhale the breath. Let's do 3 more. All right, coming back to hands and knees. Press back to a child's pose, and we're going to prepare to work the core with some planking exercises. And this will have various levels, so you can take the ones that work best for you. So from your child's pose, arms are nice and lengthened way out in front of you. Draw your body forward. Keep going until your hips come to neutral. This is your kneeling plank. Then push back to child's pose. We'll do that one more time. Come forward to kneeling plank. Nice strong core. Push back to child's pose. Now come forward to kneeling plank. Option to tuck your toes. Lift your knees off the floor. Come to full plank. Bring your knees back down. Press back to child's pose. We'll do that variation one more time. Forward to kneeling plank. Tuck the toes to high plank. Lower the knees and press back to child. So you have two variations, either child's pose to kneeling plank or child's pose, kneeling plank, high plank, kneeling plank, child's pose. Now your third variation. Come forward to kneeling plank. Tuck your toes, high plank. Lift your hips, down dog. Don't move your hands or your feet. Back to high plank. Back to kneeling plank. Back to child's pose. So that's a nice long sequence. Forward to kneeling plank. High plank. Down dog. Don't move your hands or your feet. High plank. Kneeling plank. Child's pose. Let's do that variation one more time. Kneeling plank. High plank. Down dog. High plank. Kneeling plank. And child's pose. Come back to your kneeling plank. Tuck the toes, high plank. Down dog. High plank. Drop your right knee down only. Rotate out to side plank. Lower back down. Switch so your left knee is down, your right leg is up. Open out to the left side plank. Come back, high plank. Both knees down. Child's pose. Long sequence. Let's try it one more time. Come forward to kneeling plank. Tuck the toes, high plank. Downward dog. High plank. Right knee down. Side plank. Back to high plank. Left knee down. Side plank. Back to high plank. Kneeling plank. And child's pose. So I've given you a lot of options so far. So stay with the ones that work best for you. I have one more variation. It's the hardest one. We'll come forward to kneeling plank. Tuck the toes, high plank. Downward dog. High plank. Side plank with both legs straight. High plank. Side plank to the left. High plank. Kneeling plank. Child's pose. So let's do one more round, whichever one works best for your body today. I'm going to show the kneeling side plank one more time. So let's go to kneeling plank. high plank, downward dog, high plank. Option to drop the knee, side plank, or keep both legs straight. High plank. Option to drop the left knee, side plank, or both legs straight. High plank, kneeling plank, and child's pose and relax. Great job on that sequence, everybody. I know you took the one that was best for your body today, but still challenged yourself and raised the bar. Let's transition to a seated position as we work our boat pose for one more core exercise. And I always give a lot of options for Navasana boat pose. And in its basic form, we're just sitting with our knees bent and we can lean our body back just a little bit. We can even hold on to the back of the thighs just to work this bracing of our abs and think about your neutral spine. So if this is where you want to be today, that's wonderful. You can even put your elbows back a little bit, but don't use your arms to support you, still using your abdominals. Next option, we can let go of the hands. And then I want you to play with your boat pose here. You can lift one foot off the mat, try that for a couple of breaths. And then maybe switch. You can try both legs up and straighten. And then some of you are flexible enough, you can do the yogi toe lock, grab the big toes, and then do your boat pose here in a wide leg stretch. So wherever you are today, let's take about another 30 seconds in your boat pose. Make sure you're breathing. If you feel any pain in your lower back, that's when your feet are going to come down, or you're going to hold behind your legs. You can also add some twisting. We're changing the arm position. About another 15 seconds. Two more breaths slowly. And then release. Let your knees open to Baddha Konasana and stretch and reach through to relax your lower back. So just staying here a few breaths, make this your pose. You might be a little bit more upright. Sometimes I like to use my block to relax my head down. That's nice to have some support there. Soften through your inner thighs. Relax your pelvic floor, your abdominal muscles, let everything release. One more breath. And then bring yourself up. Have your yoga strap handy. You might need it as we do it. One more twist with a leg extended to stretch the IT band and the hamstring. And this will also get the low back and the SI joint area. So what I'd like to do is sitting, I'll face you, tuck your left leg underneath your body just a little bit. Your right leg is right in front of you here. And then your left hand is going to reach across the top of the foot until you loop your fingers around the outside edge of that right foot. And then the test is to see if you can straighten your leg all the way from here. If not, that's where your strap comes into play. So you're going to wrap it around your foot, grab it with your left hand, and then get your leg to straighten. So you might have to really let your strap out to get that leg to extend straight. Now, if you don't get it all the way straight, that's okay. I want you to do the best you can here. And then sit up really tall. Bring this leg across your body to the left side, your left shoulder, and then rotate to the back, twisting toward the right side. Your right hand can just reach behind you, or you can put it down to the floor behind you to help create what we call a second spine, to press down into the mat and help us to lift our spine upward. So we're getting some rotation, definitely. A little bit of a twist will give us some stretching through the low back. And this SI joint area is being stretched gently by the IT band pull across the body. It's all kind of connected together. Let's take 2 more breaths here, wherever you are in this twist and IT band stretch. Try to sit taller. And then come out of the twist first. Then bring the leg back to the center. Rebend the knee to release it. Okay, pause for a moment, just notice. I felt a little tension in this shoulder because I was holding the strap with that side. So that's something to think about when you're holding on to something, not to create too much tension there. Let's make a switch. So the right foot tucks under a little bit. The right hand is going to reach across the foot. See if you can get this leg to straighten. If not, that's where you use your strap. Wrap it under the bottom of the foot. Sit tall. Wherever you are today, get that leg to straighten out. Before you twist, bring the leg across. So I still have my body forward, but as I bring that leg across, now I'm feeling the IT band stretch, as well as the outer glute and the SI joint on that left side. Right hand can reach behind, or you can set your hand to the floor behind you to help create that second spine, to sit up really tall. And I'm looking back over that left shoulder as far as I can look to get a nice neck stretch. And this time I'm going to try to relax the shoulder that's holding my leg so I don't feel that tension in my upper back. 3 more breaths. Sitting taller with each inhalation, finding a little more twist with each exhalation. Then we'll come out of our twist first to face back to the front. Then bring the leg back to the front and rebend that knee. And pause for a moment and just check in. Maybe even close your eyes for a couple of breaths. And then keeping this right leg where it is, take the left leg and bring it into what we call the mermaid sit or the Z sit. Sometimes it's nice to sit up on a blanket under the right hip if your hips feel really tense to be in this position. But once we lean over to the right side, this is going to feel a little bit more comfortable. So place your right hand on the mat, reach your left arm up, look toward the ceiling and pull your left arm way back to get a nice chest expansion. Then as you exhale, it's a modification of a thread the needle. We're going to reach this left hand under our armpit and twist. And go really slow with this and see what you're feeling in this rotation. At your own pace, go back and forth between those 2 poses. Our goal is to stretch the chest, work on good posture as we reach, and then to find a little bit of a low back and SI joint release here on the twist. Our goal is maybe 4 or 5 slow repetitions. I'm on number 4. We'll make this our last one on this side. And then finish with the reach up. Pull yourself up with your side body and stretch the opposite way. And this is really hard. I almost have to take my hand and grab my shin a little bit to slightly pull myself in to stretch this opposite way. So one more time, we'll go down, right hand comes to the floor. And I want you to stretch way over to open up your left side waist. Then pull yourself up and take this opposite stretch. From here, we'll move into a modified pigeon. So take your body straight forward over your front leg and lay yourself down over that leg to feel a glute and hip stretch. If you want to slide into full pigeon, just slightly turn your body and extend the other leg straight back behind you. So I'll let you decide if you want to go into that full pose here. We'll be here about 60 seconds to enjoy that stretch, to find some release in your right hip, to soften through your lower back. Just scan your body to see if you're holding any tension anywhere. And really surrender to this pose wherever you are today. Three more slow breaths. And then very slowly, gently press yourself up. And you'll switch this position of your legs. So the left leg comes around to the front. The right leg goes to the side to our Z-sit. Get yourself comfortable, maybe propped up on a blanket if needed. Left hand reaches out on a diagonal. You don't have to have a lot of pressure in your hand. You can use your fingertips. Inhale, the arms are on a nice angle, open back. Use your back muscles to pull that arm back as far as you can. Then exhale and twist, reaching under. A gentle release for the SI joint, the lumbar spine. And then going at your own pace for 4 or 5 reps. And when you do this twist, scoop your abs inward. So almost like you're trying to do a little bit of a C curve, which we talk about in Pilates. A little bit of a rounding of the spine, just slightly, and that'll help you connect with your abdominals. One more repetition. And reach that arm back up. Use the strength of your side waist to pull yourself up and take your opposing stretch this direction. And one more time, down to the left side. This time stretch your right arm close to your ear. Really reach. And pull it up. This is so good for the QL muscle in the lower back. And then we'll fold the upper body right over that front leg to take our modified pigeon. Or you can slide the right leg back behind you even more to extend into full pigeon pose. Sometimes I like a block here for my forehead, or you can stack your fists to really relax the upper back and neck. We have a lot of tension in our neck on a daily basis anyway when we're sitting over our devices. And so this is good to have some support for your head here. Connect with your breathing. You can activate the Ujjayi breath, which is that little bit of a whisper ocean breath, where we're constricting the back of our throat. It makes a soft sound like we're fogging up our glasses. It really does help us to slow down the exhalation. 3 more slow breaths. And very carefully press yourself up and just come to a comfortable seat, a gentle, simple cross-leg pose, or any other place that feels comfortable on your body. Find a long spine. Close your eyes for a moment. Just check in. Notice how you're feeling, and maybe as you're feeling as compared to the beginning of class today. If you were experiencing any tightness or pain in any of the areas we worked, notice if there's a bit of a transformation. Think about the poses that were especially good for your body today, and those are ones you can add to your list of your own daily work. Let's take a breath together. Inhale, sweep the arms out and up. Exhale, pressing thumbs to the heart as we celebrate this opportunity to be part of the LisaBug community. We're working out together to stay strong throughout our life, to age strong, to build relationships, and to keep our heart and mind and body aligned. And the light in me honors the light in each and every one of you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'll shut our recording off. I have a couple of minutes for a quick chat, and then off to the Y I go for some clients there, but I'd love to hear how everything felt today. And remember, no class tomorrow.